Hello and welcome to the Anfield Wrap. It's brought to you by me, Rob Gutmann, today, and not Neil Atkinson, because he's gone somewhere. Do you know what? I think he's in Ayia Napa, if my memory serves. He's in Ayia Napa with his dad. So, hi, Neil and Neil's dad out there in Ayia Napa. Do you know what, Neil and Neil's dad? It's hotter here than it is there. So there. Anyway, we've got an action-packed show for you today, and I'm joined to pick the bones out of loads of stuff. Jay McKenna, Ian Ryan, and Josh Williams. In part one, we'll look at yesterday and all of the fallout from the Trent Boo Fest. And then in part two, I want to spend a couple of minutes discussing, I don't know, a random one, the weirdness incarnate that is Mikel Arteta. I just want to deep dive into his funny worldview. Before we take a look ahead to our next game against Brighton. Anyway, before we crack on with picking the bones out of yesterday's Clash of the Titans, that's the Champions LFC versus their own crowd, some words about our sponsor, Peloton. The Anfield Wrap is brought to you in association with Peloton, who are Liverpool FC's digital fitness partner as well. So they're our digital fitness partner, Ian Ryan, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Are they your digital fitness partner? We all need your digital fitness partner in our lives, and they are mine. This month, the Anfield Wrap's community of Peloton users are collectively travelling the distance between Anfield and Istanbul, aiming to be there by the 20th anniversary of Istanbul, as it's known, on May the 25th. By Friday, the tour gang had reached Munich. Apparently, I think that calls for a beer in, a Bavarian beer. Du hast das, as they say in German. That means they got this, Josh. Or you got this.
This is over my head.
Oh, it's a bad joke. Apparently, the more of us that join this trek, Josh, the easier it'll be to get to Istanbul, as it's across land and sea, and you can cycle, row, or use a tread machine. I don't think you can swim though. As long as it's recording on the Peloton app, it counts. And I think you can't get Peloton machines wet. That's why there's no swimming, Jay. Can't stress this enough. Do not cycle underwater. So if you want to join the Anfield Wrap group on the Peloton app, or join our chat on Telegram where we share tips, like not cycling underwater, and we arrange live classes to do together, then message John Gibbons for the links.
Just like Neil's intro, that, mate.
Yeah, exactly the same as Neil's intro.
No difference.
Exactly, seamless almost. It's like he was in the room.
It was.
If you thought Rob's words were good, what you needed was Andy's face while Rob was saying all of this.
This is why I didn't look at Andy's face. It was a spectre. I could feel the heat. It's hot enough today, but the heat from Andy. And I've heard Andy's opinions about our first topic, and those would blow your socks off, but we're not going to drill into them just yet. To Trent Alexander-Arnold and the obviously sad state of affairs, getting serious for a minute, that He's the subject, Jay, that all of LFC world is talking about post-match. We're champions. We played an interesting game against our closest rivals. But all there is to talk about this morning, quite frankly, is Trent, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, whether we like it or not, indeed. I think there was probably a sense of inevitability that there was going to be something yesterday.
Yeah.
Would it have been a banner? Would it have been a bit of booing? Would he have not come on? I did think he's not going to play at all. It's kind of going to be lots of images of him, sitting there on the bench, looking very awkward. I think first time he went out to warm up, he looked like, almost like he was just steadying himself for it. He took a long time to tie his shoelaces, I think it was, before he went out, and he got a bit of a clap, and I seen a few people in the lower main stand kind of gesturing at him, but there was a sense of inevitability to it. Would I personally have wanted the reaction to have been what it was? Not the booing, no. I did laugh to myself and thought there was a more than subtle dig thrown by the crowd with the Barcelona, Real Madrid and the Gerrard song and stuff like that. I think the very, very loud shout for Conor Bradley, that kind of said enough.
Yeah.
There was kind of that bit where you can show you're really angry and annoyed at somebody, but I wasn't talking about you if they really ask about it. So I think we kind of, if you were to say had the superior high ground, I wouldn't say modelling this, because I think you kind of, I think it's right that people had different perspectives, and I think in a way one of the things that's interesting to this, and it will be lost because there's no room for nuance, it's black or white in too many people's minds, particularly the wider media at the moment. So I think the players have really summed this up well. Andy Robertson was particularly interesting, but I've seen a clip of Van Dijk kind of going, he wants to go and play football for someone else, whatever, we think we're here to kind of do a job. I'd imagine probably they're split on it. I'd imagine some of them maybe are annoyed he's going, not wish him well, but think he could have done it differently. So I think there's a range of opinions. It played out the way it did. The boos, I don't think were as many people as some people are saying. It's just that it's quite loud and people start booing. It's a noise, isn't it? You can't out-sing or out-chant or out-clap a noise because it's just there and persistent. It provoked a big reaction on the Kop. I think people are probably thinking, maybe it's out of people's systems. Maybe part of them bringing them on was so it's out of people's systems so that it doesn't overshadow the Palace game. It probably now won't happen at the Palace game regardless. I think there's a wider thing to think about if you're going to present anything to Trent, like you'd have done other players. I think the club should seriously think about that. But I think there was a sense of inevitability of it happening, and we'll get into this, but it's going to provoke a range of reactions amongst some, and I do think some are maybe going over the top on all sides on it.
My 16-year-old yesterday said to me, and I thought in a way this summed it up for me. He said, I didn't agree with the booing, but he did deserve it. And I thought, I like that. It's sort of cake and eat it point, but I like it. The player can't complain at the negative reaction. This is what he bought. This is what he signed up for, quite frankly. He's made his bed, he's lying in it, and if people are having a very negative reaction, it's to be expected. Whether you or I personally would do it, it's to be expected. In that sense, it's deserved, is what I think my lad's point. Although I wish they hadn't done it, mainly because I wanted Liverpool to win a football match, and I don't think that helps winning a football match.
Yeah, I mean, I've got similar thoughts to Jay, I suppose. So, on the lead up to the game, that we do the pre-match warm-up show, and I said on that, if it was me, I wouldn't have anywhere near it. I didn't really see the point. The season objective has been achieved by winning the league. So there's a couple of things you're probably looking for in these last few games. As a fan, you want to revel in it, you want to enjoy it, you want to be with your mates, all that kind of stuff. And then maybe you also want to see maybe a little bit of a look ahead to next season. I'm sure the manager's thinking that as well. He plays Conor Bradley, for instance. So there's those things that are in there. But Trent's not part of next season. So I really did not see a massive kind of point in including him. And then before the game, I'm in my spec about 4:15, and McDowell's doing the teams about, 20 past, something like that. And my half fellow walks up to where we sit, and I said to him, did you clock that kind of reaction to Trent? And he said, no. I said, well, he got booed, so surely he won't bring him on now because it will descend into a bit of chaos. And the manager, let's have it right, has got most things spot on this season. But I think if he had his time again, he might reflect on that decision and think, maybe I shouldn't have brought him on. And my view on the whole Trent thing is, in terms of the booing and stuff, I think we've had enough external forces telling Liverpool fans how they should or shouldn't feel about this. So I'm not going to sit here now and be judge and jury on what people want to do. You pay your dough, you go through the turnstiles, and then you've got a series of decisions to make. And as long as you don't go too far and overstep a certain line, then, people are entitled to do what they want to do. And I think, for me, I was never going to boo him. I said that on the lead up to the game. I agree with Jay's points. I also both I said, listen, if it was me, I think really hammer home that Conor Bradley point, which I think he did really, really well. That will have stuck in Trent's mind. He'll have been listening to that on the bench thinking, fucking hell. But my other thought is, and I may be on my own on this, I just don't think I care enough to get too worked up over it. And again, it's just my view. And listen, he's a local lad, he's a great player, I get all that. But apart from maybe in exceptional circumstances, once a player says he does not want to play for this football club, he's pretty much fucking done to me, to be honest. I don't really want to hear him, I don't really want to see him. And that's not in a kind of nasty way or anything like that. I've just got no interest. Because for me, it's about the football club. And none of these people, and I don't really get attached to too many of them anyway, but none of these people are bigger than the football club. So for me, it's always about what comes next. What's Liverpool's plan? What are they going to do in the market? Are they going to run Conor Bradley for 38 games next season with a bit of support internally from the squad? Or are they going to go into the market? I hope they do the latter, by the way, because I think that's important. With his developments, let's not push him too soon. So, for me, I was never going to get involved in the booing, but I understand why some people maybe went there. But I was always about, just ignore him. Don't really even give him the courtesy of showing you're too bothered. I was certainly not going to clap him. I didn't sing his name during the Spurs game either, or at the end of that game, which I think some people got involved in, just because the direction of travel for me was obvious, and it's been obvious for a while, to the point where I've made me peace with it. He's made his bed, he's got to lie in that bed now, and he wouldn't have enjoyed what played out yesterday, and I can understand that to an extent, because it does feel a bit sad that it's come to this and it's ended and it's kind of descended the way it did into a bit of a chaotic kind of Anfield. And I felt a little bit sorry for the players as well in some of this, because there was times when they, in my opinion, genuinely didn't want to pass to him because of what was playing out in the stands. That's not a good place to be, that, when he's trying to win a football match. And I know it didn't really mean a great deal in the context of the season, but the manager won't have enjoyed seeing that play out either. So I hope we can draw the line under it now. I hope he doesn't play again. I don't think he should have played at the weekend. As I say, I made that clear both before the game and at the start of this show. And yeah, it is what it is.
We're not going to quite draw that line just yet here. I mean,
absolutely not.
I've got minutes to fill in, for God's sake.
Not let the agenda in.
Yeah, well, there's loads to do.
After this show, obviously.
I'm on board with that. I actually agree with the point that actually the best thing... when I became a Liverpool fan outside of Liverpool as a 9-10-year-old, the thing that struck me most about sort of becoming, imbued in the culture, was just how much dignity we had as a supporter base relative to others. And I know other fans listening in might go, "Oh, get you," and all that, but nonsense. But I do think we had more dignity. We'd clap opposition keepers. We're the only ones who did that. We'd start singing louder when we conceded a goal, and all kinds of little parts of our subculture. And booing's not part of our subculture, Josh. I get why people do it. Someone said to me online, when else are we meant to express our dissatisfaction, and we're allowed to be dissatisfied with this? I get that argument whilst not agreeing with it. How do you feel?
Yeah, I understand the dignity point, but I think you could argue, another element that kind of separates us from all the fan bases, you could maybe say is passion. But I think we're a seriously passionate fan base, and listen, every fan base is passionate to a certain degree, but Liverpool supporters are known for it. It's what we're about. So I'm not surprised that things kind of boiled over a little bit. I think Jay makes some good points. I think the inevitability of it was definitely there. I was very much paying attention when the team sheet was read out before the game had even kicked off, and he did definitely get booed. So it was inevitable for me that it was going to happen. And to be honest, a lot of it I don't have too much of an issue with, really. I think a lot of it was expected. A lot of it was relatively fine. I think, like, for example, chanting Conor Bradley's name, chanting Steven Gerrard very, very loudly, I'm all about. I think that's fine. And I think
that's more like it. That's what I mean. That's the way to do it.
The booing as well. Like, I would never... I can never see myself booing a Liverpool player. I don't think I'll ever do it. I don't think I could ever do it. But I have some sympathy with the people who did, because they feel so strongly about it that that's kind of the only position they're in where they can let Trent know how they feel. So how else are you going to do it? How else are you going to get out your system? Okay, you do it when he comes on the pitch, or you do it when he gets substituted, maybe. What I didn't get, what I thought was mad, personally, was booing every touch. I thought that was insane.
Yeah.
Because he's playing for Liverpool. He's on the ball for Liverpool, trying to win you the game. And you're actively booing him to make him play worse, which is going to hurt Liverpool, who you support. I just thought it was insane, mate. Like, if you think of the players we've booed in the past, you think of Mbappe, you think of Luis Suarez when he plays for Barcelona. There's reasons we do that, and it's to make them play worse. So if you're going to do it to a player who's wearing a red shirt, it's going to hurt you. And we go and concede on the back of it, by the way. Yeah. So that part, I thought was mad. Other than that, generally, everything went as expected for me. And I think the slot decision to bring him on, I think he viewed it a little bit too black and white. I love how he views things black and white. Yeah, he gets rid of the noise, focuses on the signal, just makes cold decisions, and I'm all about that. But he said after the game, I think he was questioned as to why he brought him on, and he said after the game, like, well, I had the job to win. My job is to win the game. Trent comes on, plays 3 brilliant passes. We nearly win the game because of his assists. But is it worth the pantomime? I don't know if it is. And I think between now and the end of the season, I think I'm with Ian. I don't think I'd bother again.
Well, okay, Rob, sorry, go on, just point. And I get your point, but I've heard this much favour. Well, I heard it loads when we were doing the X and Gillette stuff, particularly in SOS early days.
I bet you did.
The Liverpool way, we don't wash our linen in public.
I know.
But also, it was a bit of a myth we'd created as ourselves. It was also used to just by the club often to stifle anyone criticising them on stuff. But just a little list here. We went top of the league in 2008-9, didn't we? Lucas gets subbed on at West Ham, and the crowd booed that decision. They jeered Benitez when he subbed Torres at Birmingham.
There's stuff about Houllier.
There's
stuff, we're not in
Houlier's had it, Hodgson's had it, you know, Rodgers got it a bit, Sterling got it. And Sterling's the example.
Coutinho as well.
Yeah, Coutinho got it. Sterling's the brilliant example of what you say when he comes back. It's absolutely killed his performances. He cannot perform against us no matter what.
Yeah.
And I can say that with confidence. He's not going to do that in what's left of his career. But it was all. That's the bit about not thinking it was going to happen. Is thinking there's almost, I think, a little bit of revisionism, and we forget those little moments because they were one-offs. That it was always there, because I think, as Joshua said there. And I tried to say this to yesterday about the rationality. Football is emotional, and the players and the manager, and I think that's why the players have kind of been probably a bit cute on some of this. Robertson, I think, was particularly good. He spoke about him being a friend, but you know, people in such opinions. Slot's been very strong on freedom of speech and stuff like that. But we've, which almost feels like he's making another political point like this one, which is brilliant. I'm sitting there reading, well, lad, but. Football is emotional, and our crowd, to enable us to do the things where we show such devout support, at times that's going to come out in rubbish songs or crass songs, and sometimes it's going to come out in people instantaneously booing.
Well, we can't laugh at the Blues for their boo culture and then go, it's cool.
I think
there's a bit somewhere in the middle, the truth lies.
I think people boo. I think there's showing you dissatisfaction to a player in the moment, in the circumstances. If Trent had announced he was going in January, he wouldn't have been getting booed yesterday.
Aye, agreed.
It was the video was now. If he didn't play yesterday, maybe came on at Brighton, he'd have got a smattering of boos in the away end maybe, and then played at Palace, I don't think he'd have got any. It was raw. It was in people's mind. If someone, you know, people break up in a relationship and they see their ex for the first time, they're suddenly a bit like, they're angry, aren't they? They show emotion. You know, go and ask a group of girls if, you know, an ex walked into a room, they're all sitting there looking at him. Like, there'll be something.
You're on dangerous ground now, Jake.
But a physical reaction will manifest itself, won't it? And that's what happened in the ground. A physical reaction to a fallout manifested itself. And it manifested itself initially in a kind of a bit more wit with the songs. And it boiled over. I think Josh is right. What I think, though, happened with some of the fans is they had to say, and then it was almost a bit more bravado. They probably had a berry, but a bit more bravado. Then they kept wanting to do it.
Yeah.
It's a bit like shouting shoot the first time play, you know, as a shoot, and then it's always shoot, and in the end, the rest of the cop are like, shut the fuck up, this is boring now. And that is what I think happens with the boos towards the end. There'll be people who still hate him. There'll be people who want to call him, who want to do worse than boo, but the cop and the crowd, I think, is kind of come back on side a little bit to just say, you don't have to like him, but we don't need to do that when he's on the ball, as Josh says, trying to help Liverpool win a game of football.
I think everyone's been at pains to emphasise all the way through this process we've lived over the last couple of weeks since he made the formal announcement is that there is no right way. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I mean, my mind is settled on the one. We're looking for universal truths in it. I'm very much in agreement with Josh over the view that you can't boo a player who you're asking to do good stuff for LFC in the moment. If he's got a red shirt on and you want him to play a ball, or you can't have a situation where the others aren't passing to him, that is counterproductive. And I question, now actually I don't want to say anything too controversial, but my point was, if we're all in it for Reds to win football matches, then you don't do it in that moment. So, okay, let's move it on. I'll stay with you on this, Jay. What are the lessons learned here? What happens now? We've got 2 games left. I know you've hinted at already. I think Brighton's its own thing. But would you, if it was your call, would you ask the manager to just take him out of the fray now?
I think I'd have a bit of a conversation about what you can do if you want to have any kind of redemption long term. I think I'd say what do you want to do.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's something on the player to do that. Because I'm not as angry at Trent for leaving as other fans, in part because I try and get into the mind and think, well, why has he arrived at the decision he's arrived at? And I can think to myself, 18 months ago, a fella who literally changed his life and his career said he was leaving. Probably at the same time that Real Madrid were going, do you fancy coming to play for us? And I reckon he was sold on it. And I could get why. Because no one would have been sold different. Why Liverpool, you know, everyone goes on about Liverpool should have signed these players, the 3 players, to longer term contracts. I reckon you could have put any amount of money in front of them last January, February, March, and they wouldn't have signed. Because they'd have been like, no, I'm not. It's not the money. I'm not giving you the guarantee on my future. I want to control it. So I can see why he might have been in that place, I think he might have probably got himself too far down the path. It's very hard to change your mind at the end. He might have been sitting there, you know, if you were him yesterday, I'd have had a penny for his thoughts that Barcelona beat Real Madrid, probably going to win the league, and he might be thinking to himself, it'd be really, really awkward, wouldn't it, if Liverpool won the Champions League next year and Madrid didn't and they went trophyless. So I think he's got to think of his redemption in this. I think if I was the manager, I think because I think the manager's tried to make a point about Trent. I think he's tried to do it throughout the season when he subbed him at times, knowing that this might happen. He's come out and said what he said about Bradley, whether he intended to do it or not. That showed Trent where he was in his thoughts. Maybe he should have brought on Quansah. So maybe if you don't want to start Bradley, he's going to start Bradley, but if you want to sub Bradley, play Quansah, because you might be playing Quansah right back a few times next season. So use that game. It's Monday night, it's away, it won't get as much reaction. I think he plays at Palace. I think the club, not just the manager, the club has got a thought here. Every player who's left us in the last however many years has had a presentation on the pitch. Some players who probably didn't deserve it more than others, you know, Naby Keita, or all stood there watching Naby Keita. They've all had a presentation, they all got a big montage of all the trophies they've won, don't they?
Yeah.
Right, Keita's had it, Milner's had it, Chamberlain's had it, players who haven't played for a while and stuff like that, they've had it.
Yeah.
Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Did Raheem Sterling get it?
No, because I'm on about the slots. I'm on about the
Klopp
era. Anyone who's done, like, you know, won the lot, they get a Champions Award, don't they? They get a big thing. Wijnaldum and thinking that had it.
Right.
Does Trent Alexander-Arnold get that? Liverpool beat Palace, or Liverpool draw against Palace, or Liverpool lose against Palace. No one's bothered because everyone's going to be sitting there going, get that trophy on the pitch and get it lifted high. And then Liverpool, and, you know, they made a bit of a balls up with the Klopp stuff last season because it went on so long. So they want to really delay everybody from waiting for that moment. They've waited by saying, and now we're going to present a lovely set of photos to Trent Alexander-Arnold. I don't think they do, but I think it makes a very deliberate decision to say we're not going to do that. So you do it before the game, you do what you do, but they've got a decision to make now. And it's not just because of the booing about picking the player. The next home game, we get the league.
Well, the players got some input on this too.
And he's got to think about it.
I mean, I go back to something you said earlier. I don't think you used this word, but effectively, I felt you did. Making him invisible, I think, is the best. In my view, is the best for him and for the crowd, really. And the best, and I agree with something Jay said or hinted at, is there does come. I feel maybe other people, many won't agree with me on this. There needs to be. I would like there to be a process of, should we use a modern term, healing, right? I'd like to feel, quite frankly, and others would go, you are joking, Rob, but I'd like to feel in 2 years' time, if he's had a terrible time at Madrid, but he's still a good player, and we happen to need a right back at that moment in time, that it's not impossible that we wouldn't have a player. I felt that about Michael Owen. I felt that about many a player who's Phil Coutinho at certain points. And I know this is the worst of them. And Andy's face I can't look at the moment because
this one goes
it looks like one giant rat emoji. You can see that in a human being. But let's put it this way: if I was Trent Alexander, I would like to see there was a way I could achieve that tall order. But I think invisibility, a cloak of invisibility from all sides, is the best move from here on.
Listen, he may well have thought that when he was going through this process of negotiating his exit. And I think, you know, the way he's gone about his exit, I understand what Jay's saying about, you know, Klopp leaving and stuff, and maybe there's some mitigation there. But I do feel a lot of people do get upset by the way it's almost been engineered, and I understand that because it does feel like this has been in the post for a long time. And as I said before, it does feel a little bit sad in the sense that, you know, Liverpool are losing a very, very good footballer. You know, we can't forget that. Broadly speaking, over the majority of his Liverpool career, he's been excellent, but he is a football with flaws as well, and quite a few of them. And
that's another conversation.
I've said it on other shows. You know, Liverpool. Lots of people have said Liverpool will be fine, and that is absolutely right because they will be. Better players than him have left. That's been said before. Because for all his kind of technique and ability, you know, there are elements to his game where he would, certainly me, massively frustrate me. And I've said that on other shows. You know, his lack of sometimes desire and wanting to put himself in defensive situations did bear my head out a little bit. And I think the manager's been really crystal clear that he wouldn't really entertain any of that. I think under Klopp, and this is not to kind of downplay Klopp because I love them, but I think he would maybe let Trent get away a little bit with stuff like that. I don't think this manager would fucking entertain any of that, where you're knocking off or you're just jogging back in or you're thinking someone else is going to do your running for you. Absolutely not on slot watch, in my opinion. And wait, you know, the next move for Trent, you know, he's obviously going to go to Madrid. And I just hope he's thought it through for his sake as well, because, you know, we got a lot of stick yesterday. And there was a real reason for that in terms of how he's left the football club or how he's leaving the football club, because that is important. It's important how you leave the building, and he's leaving in a really, really poor way. But he's going into a situation there, by the way, where they fucking booed better players than him, and they've turned their back on better players than him. So he's got to, as I said before, he's got to lie in that bed. It could be a really uncomfortable kind of spell for him now. But I'm listening, he may go there and have a great 12 months and then it turns after that, or he may just smash it. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But your point about could he ever come back, it feels incredibly raw now to even think about that. And sure. I could not see a way home for him. I've got to be honest. I think, he's made this decision and he will have to kind of accept that. And then other people get to feel how they get to feel. So, the stuff around the parade, as I say, I think you used the word invisible there. I just think Liverpool cannot entertain that now. There can't be a presentation.
Putting him on the bus.
Listen, I think he'll have
sit downstairs.
No, yeah, absolutely. In the
next
toilet.
To the driver.
I think he'll have obviously a big say on that, and the players will want him there. So I think he gets to do that, and that he's contributed to the season, so that feels right that he gets to do that, and he gets his medal and stuff. But I think in terms of playing time, that's done now. There should be no presentation, no playing time, and we've just got to crack on.
Jay.
For those reasons, the invisibility is impossible. And I think, listen, everyone's had to say now. The crowd's made itself known. If you think he's a prick or you think he's fine, you've had your say now. Concentrate on Liverpool and enjoy the moment. He deserves to be on that bus. There's no way you could say to an employee.
The players are one there, Jay.
The players, and rightly so. They're going to say to him, "You've contributed to this success, and you deserve it, and it can be a swan song." And he might feel like he's out of place, to a person who's leaving an organisation, still going to the Christmas party just as they're about to go out the door. But listen, it is what it is.
He won't be able to get off. He's on.
Well, that's it. Yeah, he's not going to sit downstairs, and he's going to make it look more obvious for himself. So if he wants his future and his career, he's got to ride with that, and he wants to be a balance or play. He comes with pressure. He's got to lean into that. So the invisibility is impossible. I do find there's a quandary though, because I kind of get people's upset with Trent, but I do think this, and I lean into, and I accept the irrationality, and I comment on this yesterday on Twitter, but because people try and apply rational thought to football, I'd say this to some of the people really angry at Trent. You're really angry at a lad leaving us on a free, but probably, I'd be interested to know, those same supporters expect that Núñez, with a contract, might say he doesn't want to leave, but you'll want him to leave. You're picking and choosing. It's like you can't have that both ways. You can't pick and choose that. And some will say, "Oh, well, it's about a local lad, isn't it?" It's like, well, I don't reckon any of us, if we picked up a local lad, I don't reckon any of us were thinking, "Oh, we've got Kenny Dalglish on the cheap from Celtic there, did we, when he was 17?" I don't think any of us are worried about how much we paid for Harvey Elliott or Raheem Sterling from clubs close to where they grew up, are we? None of us are going, "Oh, you know what, he's done a dirty on him there. What a terrible fella this, they should boo him." We laugh when Fulham boo Harvey Elliott.
Yeah.
So you can't kind of have that both ways. You've got to accept, the reality of the situation. These are players going to work. They've got contracts. It sometimes works for us. It sometimes works against us. If it wasn't Real Madrid, he probably wouldn't be leaving, and he'd be signing for Liverpool for a long time. So, listen, it is what it is. Now, people have had to say, for me, the invisibility is possible, I think, around the football. Absolutely. But we've got a question to ask what's going to happen with that presentation, and they've got to do something on the parade, and he deserves a spot on the parade. I think he deserves some of the stick he got yesterday. I wouldn't have gone with the booing, as Josh said, when he was playing, but coming onto the pitch, it's on him. He made his bed. But I think the invisibility is impossible.
Okay, Josh?
Yeah, I think it's relatively impossible. I think you can... I think keeping him out the spotlight is the big thing for me. I think when you're bringing him on...
That's what I mean, yeah.
Yeah, when you're bringing him on, that's like a... It's a moment, isn't it? It's a moment in the game that everyone like pauses and waits and like watches it happen and that. And when you're taking him off, it's the same. When he's on the ball, that's another one. I think if he's in the parade, if he's on a bus, if he's part of the group, he is relatively shielded.
I
from.
agree, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So,
it feels different, I think.
A presentation as well that'd be suicide in my opinion. I think that'd be insane.
I
don't think he'll want that personally.
Well, I agree. I think from a player's perspective, if I was Trent, you've got to know you. I mean, he should know the city, but even if he didn't, he'd know based on his reaction. He knows it now, yeah. Based on a reaction so far, you've got to be streetwise about that. You've got to be saying, like, if I was Trent, after that, I probably might have already said it, but after that, I would be saying to Slot this week in training, you're probably best not playing me again, and just maybe taking that, because I don't know how Sloth feels with that. Slot might feel like he's got to include him. Slot might feel like Trent wants to play or something. I don't know, but I do think there's a degree of responsibility with the player on this, that like just be streetwise about it. Just don't play into the pantomime, because it's.
Do you think, Josh? Can I interrupt you, because I'd like to hear you on this one? Do you think there's a case? I mean, the player, he came out and made that schmaltzy statement which had music over the back of, which made me as angry.
Video.
So his video, yeah.
The
music over the back of the video, sad music, made that. That's probably made me angrier than anything, because that was so contrived.
What was he meant to put Hala Madrid in the back of it?
No fucking music, Jay. There was no need for any music. But I do wonder if there's a case for him to come out with a further statement without music, right? Where he goes, just be honest. Go, I know you're angry with me, and you're entitled to be. You're really, really entitled to be. And it's probably for the best that I get out of the way here. You're going to hate me forever, and I'm going to suck it up. I know I've blown my legacy. It is what it is. I've made my bed. I'm going to lie in it, and I hope Liverpool win forever and a day. And I don't mind if you hate me forever. I don't know, something absolutely from the heart.
Yeah.
I think that wouldn't do him any harm.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's really. I think it's really just difficult, to be honest. I think it's the kind of thing where everyone would have an opinion on what the best course of action is. But no matter what course of action you actually take, there'll always be someone saying, you should have done it this way. It would have been better to be done it that way. Like someone yesterday to me in the ground, and the cop said he shouldn't have announced that he's leaving until the end of the season. But then he gets called a coward if he does that. Yeah, if he does it at the start of the season, and we don't have the best campaign or whatever, he gets criticised for impacting our results or something. So it's a bit of a no-win situation, really. It's the kind of thing that you just gotta. I think it's the best. I think the way it's been navigated, Liverpool have won the league. You can't forget that. Liverpool have won the Premier League with Trent as a regular starter. This whole thing now was a bit of a pantomime, but it was a game where Liverpool didn't need to win anyway. So we're quite fortunate that it's worked out the way it has. You've just got an opportunity now with a few games left to just take the streetwise approach for me, and that would be involving them as little as possible, keeping them away from the spotlight, and letting them move to Madrid. I was going to say in peace, but that feels a bit of a weird line, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, just go, lad.
Yeah, just
I think shut the door on the way out. Okay, I wanted to...
Just don't ruin the fun, I think, is the crucial line, because it was an absolute party up until
what
second half.
Well, okay, we're going to... In part one, I wanted to have covered that thing called the football match off, but we'll have a go at it in part two. Trent still occupying so many of our thoughts and conversations. Before we do drill down on that and Arteta's weirdness and other stuff, first we go to an insert, Mike Morris and Amina Atiq talking about Writing on the Wall Festival.
It is John Gibbons from the Anfield Wrap. We're here yet again to talk about some old friends, Writing on the Wall Festival, and particularly at the Liverpool Rising Against Racism event. We've got Mike Morris and Amina Atiq who's joined us as well. First of all, thanks so much for coming in, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you getting us in. Great to meet you again and have a chat on the Anfield Wrap, which I listen to and you enjoy.
Well, as I mentioned there, we at the top, hinted we've had you guys in before. It's actually 25 years you guys have been going, which is an incredible achievement that we should note before we talk about sort of this year, because keeping anything going for 25 years is tough, but certainly something that is, in my opinion and a lot of other people's opinions, so important to the city and more important than ever. It's a fantastic thing to not just continue but grow across all this time.
Yeah, well, thanks very much. I mean, we had Irvin Welsh with the festival on Friday, and he was a guest at our first festival, and he said the same as I feel. It doesn't seem that long ago. Started with a 5-day festival in June 2000. Now we do a month-long festival in May. We do Black History Month in October, and we run a lot of the people don't see is we run a huge amount of projects, right across communities throughout the year. So yeah, I mean it's hard work in the art sector in some ways, but I think because as an organisation, we're not just the festival, we're, and the festival itself, we connect to communities, we do work that kind of hits upon issues, and we do a lot of work which is about really trying to use creativity to get communities to engage in a whole range of issues. And, we try and develop pathways for people, for, young artists and writers, so that it's not just a circus moving on. This is embedded in the city, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why we're still here,
Yeah, I've been to lots of events over the years, and sometimes you're entertained, other times you're challenged a little bit, other times it's thought-provoking, and so it's a lot of different ways it will kind of stimulate us, really, and that's, I think, why it has been so successful.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, when you say 25 years, I look back and think, I joined when I was 17.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to give my age away, but, more than 10 years now.
Well, you were in the Young Writers Group,
Yeah.
weren't you? And there's a couple of people, including people performing in the festival, Blue Sings, Amina, Atiq, others who've been part of the programmes over the years. And to be honest with you, I think that is probably one of our proudest achievements.
Yeah, the people who you've developed and pushed on to bigger and better things.
I mean, it's down to them. In the end, it's down to them, because you've got to finish that novel, you've got to write that poem, you've got to have the courage to get up and to perform. But I think we see ourselves as a bit of a collective in that way, that we can support people, people support us, we work together to make things happen. We're all interested in the same issues, and it's an artistic endeavour, and that's a great thing to do. It's like yourselves doing what you love, we do what we love, and I think if you love something, that shows through.
I also think with writing on the wall, it's visible and it's accessible, because when I was 17, I just typed in on Google, poetry, and the first one that came up was an 8-week spoken word project, which was at the library, Central Library, and I'd already performed poetry before then, but I think with writing on the wall, it gave that kind of idea of a structure, and there's an outcome.
Yeah.
And I think for any artist starting out, or any writer, is the idea that there's a beginning, but also there's an end for you to then take them tools to enable you to go out into the world on your own. And that's what a lot of the relationship with many artists who go through writing on the wall is, that they come through the projects, but then they come in and out. And that long-term sustainable relationship is really important within the arts, because the last thing you want is writers to come in and then feel like they can't pursue their own career in their creative endeavours. But also I think with writing on the wall that people don't miss is that they're entrepreneurial, so they have like a business program, don't you?
Yeah.
And support.
Well, we support in various ways. Right to Work is one for people who are economically inactive. But with artists, it's incredibly hard as an artist to actually make it work. We've had people ring us up saying, can you get, we're having an event, and can you get such a person, quite a high name figure in Liverpool without mentioning names. And we said, yeah, that's fine. We'll give them a call. What's the fee? Oh, there isn't a fee. And we're like, well, everybody from the chief executive to the cleaner is getting paid, and the person you want to put on your flyer isn't getting it, and it's wrong. And the reason why artists are available is because they're not having to take full-time or part-time jobs. So therefore you need to pay a fee, and you need to pay a proper fee. It's not breaking your bank to do this. So we've been active in that type of thing as well. And we raise funds ourselves, obviously, to put on projects. And all of our projects, from Recite, which is one about health inequities linked to storytelling with the School of Tropical Medicine, Right to Work, What's Your Story projects, like we just delivered one in Spellow Library, as well, What's Your Walton Story, are all led by artists. And, the power of that with people who are just starting out, actually seeing local people. So, it's visible, they talk, they look like you, etc. But they're showing the creativity is something that you don't have to lose once you leave primary school. It can be an integral part of your life, but it can also unlock things in people and get them to express themselves and tell their story in a way that they want to. And then we work with people to edit, to make things good. We publish an awful lot of work. We estimate that we published the work of 500 people in the last decade.
Wow.
And that includes memoirs, novels that we've published, histories that we've done a huge amount from our creative heritage projects, and also the people in our the day-to-day projects like Watch Your Story. We publish anthologies of their work as well, and we think that's a really important step at saying, okay, you know, I've written, I'm a writer, and they can then take that forward, you know, with us, with other groups, etc. And then pathways have been really, really important. We know in Liverpool, you know, it's often said city of storytellers, and I think that is true. But in terms of actually getting the work visible and making it relevant and giving people a voice, I think the publishing side, the performance side, the festival, giving a platform is just vital, you know, as part of people's development.
Yeah. So it's fantastic. It's great. We've established that. But the best way for people to support is to come to events. And there's a month-long programme, like you said. But one event, particularly that we're here to talk about today, is Liverpool Rising Against Racism. And what I love about it is it's such a varied programme. You've got hip-hop artists, you've got guitar bands who I know, you've got poets. Something for everyone, and something that maybe people wouldn't necessarily go out and sort of see normally, but it's a real varied programme at a fantastic price.
Well, I mean that event's on Saturday the 17th of May in the St George's Hall concert room, Liverpool Rising Against Racism. We shouldn't need to say it, but you know the reason why we put that on is because, particularly after what happened, the tragic murder of the young girls in Southport, which was, you know, rather than people go to mourn, went to riot. And for racist rioting, there's just no two ways about it. That resulted in, obviously, Spello Library being burned. But it's not just around that. There's wider issues here, you know, that are under the surface. And I think it's something that's just vital for us to engage with. And it's, you know, in a way, harks back to, I think, 1978, Rock Against Racism, the big gig that happened in London in response to the rise of the National Front. You know, the racism these days is sometimes it's more subtle in a sense. You know, it's obviously there's a lot of online stuff as well. And I think one of the things which is really important, is about bringing people together to celebrate a great lineup of artists, and to show people that, you know, this hate in society, you know, is so divisive, is physically threatening. You know, anything like that happens in an area, people who are of diverse cultures, they feel unsafe, they can feel threatened. And, you know, I think it's really vital that, you know, we stand up and kind of be counted on this. And that's the purpose for that event. So, you know, it is a great lineup. We've got Skinny Man, Hey Dog, Roy, Blue Saint, Sam Milne, and the Virants, my nephew, you know him as well. Yeah, Jay Farley, I think it's Batala, sorry. And the wonderful Amina Atiq performing as well. And I think it's a fabulous lineup. You know, I'm looking forward to hearing yourself again, of course, but, you know, everybody else.
No, it is. And I think, I mean, a lot of people from Liverpool, you'd be surprised to put racism and Liverpool in the same sentence. Yeah. But I think after the riots, I think we were just heartbreaking to see our system. Well, firstly, what did libraries ever do to us? Yeah. You know, they just, you know, what did books ever do? But I think it's a wider issue, is that it's the fact that you could bear something so easily. This is more now like we need to have a conversation, and it is going to always be uncomfortable. But I think this is also about fighting for one injustice, is also about all the other issues. And I don't see it as a solo like issue. I think fighting against racism, I'm also fighting every form of discrimination. And I also believe that if you can stand up for yourself and defend against your own injustices, then you can also stand up for others. So I do think, you know, these things are not the beginning of things. These are things that have happened historically, and we're just going to continue that legacy in that conversation. But I think it's also a great way to do it through art and creativity, because most of these artists, I've known them most of my career, and they've always had these themes are so vital in their work. But I also think more of is that, because after the riots, I think people didn't want to have the conversation, because it felt like we were responding emotionally. And I think I'm trying to say as an artist in this event, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to have emotion. It's okay to have questions. It's okay to be curious. It's okay to be, to even be angry of differences. But it's about what you do with that anger. And actually having a conversation, have a cup of tea is really the human thing to do. And the way we're doing it is, well, come and listen to our work and our art. And our art doesn't have to respond to racism. It can just respond to our lives. And the fact that we are in support. So allyship is really important. And I think moving forward as a city, I think, and I've always said this, like, as a Yemeni, of a background of being Yemeni young woman, it was also Muslim. I've always had this like love-hate relationship with the word racism, but also Liverpool. And that doesn't mean I love the city less because if there's a racist attack, it's more of like, I want to make it better. I want to make my city the best example in this country to lead the way of what a city looks like with equality, because we deserve to be that. And I think when people criticise their city, it does not mean that it is a less of or we are a disgrace to our city. It's more of, no, we want to be better.
Yeah, it shows that you love it rather than the opposite, yeah.
I mean, if you spend all your career writing love letters to John Lennon, then I'm sure you can also fight for racism. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no... And I think this is one thing, I see this event as a form of love, not as a form of like, we're responding to something, or we're responding and it has to be aggressive. It can be creative, it can be music, it can be poetry. And we're showing that, for me as a poet, I'm showing that example that my poetry doesn't have to be angry to respond to racism. It can also be a form of love.
Do you think about what you're doing in terms of where you're performing and who you're performing in front of? Because you mentioned that obviously there's themes into your work, but do you think, right, this event with this type of people, with this kind of theme, like, I want to target it more, not necessarily target, but style it more in a certain way?
I mean, I'd love to see new faces in the audience. I mean, Liverpool's such a small, like, it is a small city. You see the same people in the audience, but I'd love to see people who are curious. I mean, I don't know if you'll agree with me, but I'd love to see reform voters in that event who are curious about, because, I do have a lot of, like, I'm sometimes that person on social media commenting back, and a lot of people are just like confused, and I think sometimes it's a reflection or projection of how their life is.
Yeah.
So that they want to find a scapegoat. And I mean, that's just a historical issue anyway within racism. But I always tell people, like, you don't have to experience racism to fight against racism. All you have to do is we all have faced injustice in some way. Whether that is form of discrimination of our gender, or the way we look, our class. So if we can use that emotion of how we feel in that oppressive state and use that emotion for others, because if you can't stand up for yourself, how are you going to stand up for others? And I think it's just human empathy, isn't it? And I think if we have more of that, it's not going to remove every uncomfortable conversation, but we're going to be better at having uncomfortable conversations. Because it's not about, even me, I always say, like, you don't have to accept everything I do or what I wear. But the least I deserve as a human being is respect. And I feel like that's the same thing. I don't have to accept everything of differences, but it's actually saying, well, racism can also turn into life and death. I mean, what we saw in the rise of a burning building, I always think, well, what if there was people in that building? What if that had cost someone's life? And I think we need to think of the consequences of our actions, because one day it's a building, next, what is it?
We've seen it happen before in Liverpool's history. 1919 race riots ended up with a Bermudan seaman called Charles Watton, who had to jump in the King's Dock to escape a mob and was kind of pretty much stoned in the water and drowned. And I think it's a valid point about how things can kind of escalate. There's a lot of talk about communities feeling left behind. And really the conversation we should be having is why, when we know there's so much wealth that has gone upwards, austerity, in my opinion, is a political decision. I think Labour needs to really address that by putting money into communities. I mean, I get it. I mean, I've lived in Liverpool obviously all my life, and you go into areas where there's just been no investment, there's no development. A lot of pathways for people to get into employment have gone. The vocational qualifications, university fees are sky high. There's all of those things that are barriers to people being able to find work, decent housing, cost of living. I mean, never mind trying to rent somewhere. We know what's going on there. Cost of living is just rocketed as well. They're not being left behind. They're being targeted. They are subject to discrimination because, the lack of investment in those areas is having huge impacts. It's having huge impacts on health. We have the disparity in mortality rates between postcodes is like shocking when you look at it. And so it's about saying they're the conversations we should be having. And there is no impact upon your life of whether it's immigrants or people of other colours or races or cultures than you in terms of employment or any of those things whatsoever. And, people aren't soft, but they need to be more aware about how they're pulled into these narratives. So, yeah, I mean, obviously I'd welcome all voices there. I think it is difficult sometimes, isn't it, when you put an event on? Sometimes you're preaching to the converted. Yeah. But the other side is, it is about building up kind of confidence. I think football's a really good example. Yeah. Many years back, we all know what was happening. And the National Front, for example, were in the crowds, were targeting things. And anti-racist voices were terrified of being attacked, literally, physically, and it happened. And, the massive campaigns, show racism, the red card, kick it out, all of those things completely turned the tide on that and have made grounds into more inclusive places where people can feel safe. You can have your tribal rivalries, of course we do, in terms of, in the league or Champions League, whatever that is. But, people should still feel safe and feel welcomed. And I think it can be done. It's about, having confidence to stand up and say, we're anti-racist, we're pro-inclusion, all of those things as well. And I think it's not just about one event. This is the key thing. It's about education. It's about in schools. It's about us knowing our own history. You make a reference to John Lennon. Well, the music in Liverpool didn't just arrive in Liverpool in the sense of it was just here. It came from America particularly, and that music came from the black musicians in the likes of New York who had kind of come up through the South, and young men were going over there on the ships, and they brought it back, and that had a huge influence. So we wouldn't be the city we are without all of that mix of cultures, and we know all the rest, Irish, Welsh, all of those things as well. So yeah, I think it's really vital and a key part of our programme, not just for this festival, but obviously, kind of throughout really on a whole range of issues as well.
One event to support then, it is at St George's Hall. It is on May the 17th. It starts at 7 o'clock. Standard ticket is just £5, so like Amina said before, it's so accessible for so many people. You can buy a solidarity ticket for a little bit more as well for the tenner. It is suitable for ages 14 plus, so a good wide range of ages hopefully able to be there as well. But best of luck with it. Best of luck with the whole festival.
And can I just say, so the whole festival we're running from the until the 30th of May now. Lots of huge names in. The writer of Death of Stalin, the thick of it, Armando Iannucci, John Cooper Clarke at the end of the month. We've got events on this week on the climate change. We've got two of the women who were in the film, the documentary Spy Cops, about the police who were embedded and had kids with them and all this type of thing. And Phil Scraton actually tonight on public inquiries. So there's a huge amount going on. Our prices are very low. We make it as accessible as we can. If anybody can't afford a ticket, if they contact us, we always keep some tickets back, because we know what it's like. If you live outside the city centre and you're on benefits, it could be a fiver for you to get there and back, and a lot of people don't have that. So, it's about trying to be accessible as well. So, yeah, people can get in touch with us, and, just our website, rightonthewall.org.uk, and come along. And thanks very much for having us on, you know, and maybe we'll see you in 50 years.
There we are. In fact, you'll still be going. I'm not sure I will. There you are. Sam can do it. Cheers.
Like some mortal.
Oh, thank you very much.
Hello and thanks to Mike and Amina. So, part 2 it is. Let's talk about an actual game of football, Josh. It was... Okay, we started slowly, but for 45 minutes I was having the best time. It felt like a real game of football. It felt like Arsenal wanted to get something, that there was a statement to be made. They were trying to make statements with the Champions League. That they weren't as inferior as their points total suggests, but Liverpool seemed to be calmly and decisively putting them in their place in that first half. There seemed to be like a gulf between the two sides.
Yeah, when it was going right, I thought that we saw the biggest difference between the two teams, with that being the attack. I thought Liverpool's attack was fluid, free-flowing. We used the transition, which they never seemed to do. Whereas whenever they were building an attack, it felt like we had 10 players behind the ball every time. It felt like they were just trying to walk the ball into the net, and that sounds very typical Arsenal, going back to like Wenger's days, but that was how it looked. They didn't really have any real speed, any penetration, and like that. It felt like relatively easy for us to manage it. And going forward, as I said, we do them twice in the space of 3 minutes. I thought we were a little bit more experimental as well. I went back last night just quickly to see how we dealt with goal kicks when we were at the Emirates early in the season, and we were hitting long, you know, with Kelleher. In this game, we were fully like building from the back, because there's no pressure, there's not so much of an onus on us to win the game, so we can try a few risks, treat it as a bit of a pre-season game almost, because Arsenal's press is really good. And there was a few moments where we got around them. There was a moment where Luis Diaz has a chance at the end of it, and it's in the box, penalty spot. He just drills it right to David Raya. But that would have been a brilliant goal, yeah. And that would have stemmed from how we built the game. So I thought Liverpool were brilliant until we weren't. Yeah. Until things just started. I think the second half we were a little bit weird. Like, I thought the second half we seemed to just take our foot off the gas, nowhere near as intense. I don't know if it was a tactic to soak the pressure, sit on it and do them on the break. But whatever it was, it flipped the game completely, I felt.
Okay, we'll come on to the second half. Let's just stay with the good bit for a bit. Yeah. I thought the second goal, the first goal was odd because Arsenal were just caught napping really, but everyone on the ground was a bit shocked, although it was deserved because the momentum was building in our favour. But the second goal fascinates me, having watched it back a few times. It's a ball from Salah in the right wing, outside of his boot, down the line. Szoboszlai in the channel, whips it across the face of an open goal, and Diaz is in the right space to finish it. It's almost become the quintessential goal of the slot era, if we can call it that already. We have scored that goal at least 3 or 4 times this season, almost the same personnel involved. And you can see also the Diaz chance that Josh references. It's not quite the same, but it's got the same sort of build-up to it. We definitely know what this manager's shape or style of players now.
Yeah, and I felt in terms of selection, it was there or thereabouts to what you were probably expecting. Maybe people would have thought McAllister would have played, and I did as well. But he goes with Curtis. But I'm glad he went Diaz through the middle, because whilst it's not always been perfect, I think that has been Liverpool's best way home. I think in a lot of football matches where Diaz has played that role, I think Jota and Núñez just, for different reasons, just look a mile off it, to be honest. And both of them have been a pretty tough watch in the main over recent months. But I thought Liverpool were nothing short of outstanding for about 35 minutes of that first half. It was brilliant football. In terms of that first goal, it comes on the back of almost getting in through Gakpo anyway, and he probably should do a little bit better. Andy Robbo then gets his first assist and stuff. And yeah, we were really, really good. It did massively flatter Arsenal that it was only 2. It could have been a lot worse for them, and it was great. And the kind of the ground itself was just bubbling. The atmosphere was unbelievable, and it was everything you kind of wanted and hoped that game would look and feel like, to be honest. And then, listen, we will come on to the second half, but it does just remind me of a couple of other performances that we've seen this season where Liverpool have just switched off a little bit. Yeah. And then when you do switch off a little bit, my God, it isn't half hard to just pick up that momentum again and run. So it's something they're going to have to work on. Listen, Neil's talked a little bit this season about turning 1 into 2, and you'd have to say they do that brilliantly yesterday. It's like 90 seconds between the goals. It does remind you a little bit of football under Klopp in terms of when you've turned the screw, you really, really turn the screw. And for 10 or 15 minutes there, it looked like Arsenal were going to be on the end of one, on the end of a serious one, but they ride it out and then they'll set the second half something different.
Yeah, I think the end of season feel played its part, Jay. I think coming out after the break, we'd obviously had a lovely half-time, too nice a half-time, and the sun was shining. And I think what changes the game really is that Arsenal catch us cold very, very, very early. They don't actually inflict a lot of pain or suffering on us in terms of their dominance of the ball in that second half or making chance after chance, but they catch us napping. We're not quite switched on.
Yeah, I reckon some of the players must have been on the concourses. That if you look at the videos that are doing on that concourse, or various concourses around the ground, including the Annie Road, people with actual pyro inside the Annie Road concourse. I think they're getting a ban anytime soon. Is it maybe the players who are with them? The second half, that immediate bit, reminded me almost of what we've done to teams this season, where we've kind of not been great first half. Maybe it's a 0-0 or a 1-0, and you're thinking there's a little bit more. And Liverpool under Klopp done this a lot. Liverpool under Slot have done it a lot. He just tweaked something, and I probably suspect Arteta made a couple of tactical tweets, and he also probably said, "Do not let these pricks embarrass us here." Because first half, I was thinking, there's every chance this is a bit like the other year when a few years back when we played them, it was 4-0 at half time.
Yeah, Arteta played in that actually.
Yeah, did he? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, this has got all the hallmarks of 4-0 and that away ends empty by half time, because we were all over them. And I just think we probably used up a fair bit of energy. As I imagine, I've heard the comments about training. It's very hard to get players to train at the same intensity. If you've won the league, you've fulfilled your objective. It's probably the same in a game. We started to look tired second half, so I think we were caught napping a little bit, but I think we looked tired, and that meant we lost our shape a bit. Gakpo, in particular, looked very tired very quickly. I think Gravenberch, and there's a little bit of me there, and I think some of it was just contributed by what Ian saying before. Once you're off it a bit, it's hard to get going again. I think there was a little bit of that in some of the players. They were tired, and they weren't quite at it from the off second half. And they probably also thought they'd just have enough to manage it. And to be fair, yeah, I know, all the sense stuff and the booing, but, that goal, Alisson tips it around the post. Most 9 times out of 10, it doesn't bounce out to Menino. He's offside. It's a different game. We'd have still won 2-1. I don't think Arsenal, as you say, it was weird because they didn't come out and blow us away. They didn't come out and put us on the back foot where I thought we were terrible. Suddenly, it just looked like we stopped playing. And that's something he does need to think about, because no matter where you are in the league, you want to be able to turn it on when you turn it on. And we can do it in first half, and we've done it in second half. Getting that match of doing it in both. That was a bit interesting yesterday.
Yeah, I think as well, and without going back over old ground, Josh, we do lose 10 minutes because of the Trent fiasco, really, and the crowd's discontent. And it takes really is it when Jota comes on we sort of reorientate ourselves and we galvanised a bit. And I think the manager referenced this post-match and actually had a proper go at them and very nearly made it a lovely afternoon with a sweet late potential winner. Any lessons we can learn from that game at all? I mean, I'm happy to just park the first half and go, that was the real Liverpool, that was the real Arsenal, the rest can all fuck off. It's just, end of season farce. Or is that just being too biased?
I don't know. It's actually, lessons is an interesting one. I think that the building from the back stuff that we saw in the first half that I referenced before, I think we might see a little bit more of that next season. I think
even at theirs.
Yeah, I think so. I think Slot has looked at this season and he's been a bit of a results machine, and he's been a little bit pragmatic at times, and he's focused on getting over the line basically. And I think gradually over the course of the season, the possibility of winning the title has increased, and he's focused more and more on results. But I think the long-term plan is for Liverpool Liverpool have had the ball less possession-wise this season than last season under Jurgen Klopp. So I don't think that, based on the way Slot speaks about the game, that's not the plan. I don't think going long from goal kicks is necessarily the plan. But we have at times in this game, would we have used the long ball a bit more if the title was on the line? I think we probably would have. So I think moving forward, maybe I wouldn't say it's a lesson, but I think getting better at escaping your own defensive third with the ball on the floor is possibly a thing. You're
right about that, how often we tried to do it yesterday. There were a few times where we kind of almost ticked Arsenal in that we had Curtis stood on the edge of the box waiting for the ball, and literally as Alisson looked like he was going to play it to Van Dijk, he played it, Curtis stepped into the box and he played it to
There's one moment where he does get robbed.
He got caught. He got caught.
But other than that, it was generally...
But it was deliberate they were doing it. They've done it a few times where he passed the ball around, and it's very interesting that they might try and do that. The other thing I thought was a lesson as well is that I kind of think that you're right about that, the goal where, we've gone down that flank a lot and Salah's outside of his boot should be like kind of, it's just a trademark he's got now, and that's fascinating to see. But in a way, I think that creates the space for Robertson to do what he does at the on the other side. He's not got that same player. We don't overload that side as much, but he gets more space. That's how the goal comes. He can put those crosses in. He's got that space which will help him. It kind of gives us a bit of a union, a bit like what we used to have with Trent when you used to think you'd have Wijnaldum, Salah, Trent on that right-hand side. Now it might be Bradley, Szoboszlai, Salah. There's a lot of energy. I think there'll be teams then who think, right, we're going to have to worry about that flank. So next season, I think this will be the lesson. You'll think they'll start worrying about Bradley's pace. What you lose from what Trent can do whipping a ball in, Bradley's got pace. So they're going to worry about that overlap. Salah drops deep. They're not going to know which way to go. They're going to double up a little bit. And that's going to create space on the left-hand side. So I think you'll start to see Liverpool, be a bit more possession-based, but also almost like switching the play a lot, going to different sides, going to different flanks. Because in a few games this season, I've always felt like we've just tried to go down one flank repeatedly.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I think, yes, they felt that there was a bit more of a threat on each side, which was difficult for even Arsenal to manage, let alone other teams.
Yeah, in some respects, I thought, looking at lessons, I feel the second half's a write-off in terms of that, and the more I'm listening to you all about it, because of what happens with Trent, because of the fact that the goals are sort of incongruous and one happens too early and changes the shape of the game, and also because, quite frankly, everyone's tired, including them, by the way. They've had a tougher way in Paris, and maybe on another day, if they'd had a full week, they could have gone and beaten us in the second half and maybe just have a different conversation. I would, if I've got a manager, I would like to show the players again that second 45 minutes in the close season, pre-season goes. That's how we want to play football. That was against, one of the very best teams would have played this season, and look what you were able to do to them.
Yeah. I think the other thing the manager may have been looking at as well, and maybe I'm overthinking this because it might just be that he wanted to give McAllister a rest, but I wouldn't be surprised if he just wanted to see where Jones is at in terms of.
Is he good enough for
in terms of a regular option for him? Because I think the manager's been very wedded to the three that nearly always play. I know Jones has played, and sometimes there's been little niggles and stuff where he's had to come in, or maybe he's wanted to mix it up a little bit. Jones obviously had a little bit more height and physicality than, say, McAllister, but I do think there's something in let's just see him against top class opposition. Now, again, you can have a chat about where Arsenal are in terms of being full throttle because of the exploits of the midweek and stuff, and there's no Declan Rice and all that. But I do think that was interesting, and I think the manager's very fixed on those three, McAllister, Szoboszlai and Gravenberch. We know rates them really highly. Yes, he's made some comments about maybe Szoboszlai's output and stuff, and I think that still feels fair, although I thought he was, in the main, yes, he certainly first half, he was excellent. But the Curtis thing I think is interesting because I think most people rate him as a player, and I rate him as a player. I think he's good. But I think, for me, in terms of his next step, he has to demonstrate far more consistency. I think with Curtis, you quite often get a really, really high-level game, and then the following game, I'm not completely shocked when he's quite a bit below that level, and it just looks a bit scrappy. And he's getting caught on it a little bit, and it happens yesterday, but it's not the first time I've seen him come into high-level games this season where he's done exactly the same thing in really kind of dangerous areas, and I think that's something the manager will have an eye on because we know he is unbelievably hot on, you don't take fucking risks, boys. You play the pass when you play the pass, and it needs to be at the right time, but also just dwelling on it a little bit. And I think Curtis he's moved past that to an extent, where some of the criticism always felt a little bit harsh, but it is consecutive managers now that have made the point that there are times when he does need to release it a little bit quicker. I think that's still in his game a little bit. So I think maybe they were just looking at that and just seeing how much of a regular option can he be, because I don't think Liverpool want to go into a season next year where they were just relying on this, core 15, 16. It has to be bigger than that. There has to be more options. And I think Curtis has absolutely got the ability to go and be an integral part of the squad. It'll just be interesting to see whether he's able to make that next step and become an integral part of the 11.
Yeah, so we'll be talking about the expansion of that squad in tomorrow's Transfer Gutter Show, hosted by me, as usual, and that's on our subscription service, Tour Player, but lots to look forward to there. But I now want to switch and talk Jay, about the ledge. Well, the man of the week in a certain sense, Mikel Arteta.
The ledge.
He's just
a fucking helmet.
I know. Look. Did you want to go too hard and just gloat and laugh at him because it's been a poor performance in the league by Arsenal, despite their injury situation. They're going to finish the season possibly on a sub 2 points per game average, which is seriously unimpressive for a team that fancied themselves as title contenders. Liverpool had a serious injury situation last season and managed to get above that. But this week, I think he's sort of outdone himself with some really quite bizarre statements. The one about, which was the first one was about, if you think about the points total Liverpool had at the point they clinched the title, which was 82, well, Arsenal got more than that the previous 2 seasons, which was just insane analysis. And then his conclusion after they got beaten by Paris Saint-Germain in the week, that because they had a marginally better XG, that they were actually the best team in Europe all along, and maybe by extrapolation the best team in the world and England and the universe. I feel he hasn't covered himself in glory.
No, well, I think if he was called Rafa Benitez, he'd be having fans accusing him of cracking up, wouldn't he? He's just got himself really annoyed. He's got in his own head. He's like sat there.
Is it in his own head, or is it for other people's heads? Is he just misjudging it?
I think he's got in his own head. He reminds me, and you can maybe see why he worked with him for so long. I said this to someone in work last week. He reminds me a bit of Guardiola. You can see why he worked with Guardiola. You ever watched that Amazon one where they're at Goodison Park, they're playing Liverpool in the quarter-final, maybe a couple of days later, and he's talking at half-time of a game against Everton about Liverpool's front three, and I could well imagine that Mikel Arteta's sat there at random times, the kids are maybe saying, what can we have for tea tonight, Dad? And he said, you know what it is, the problem with Liverpool? And they're like, yeah, Dad, but I wanted fish fingers, just put fish fingers in the oven, Dad. So I reckon he's got in his own head a bit, and it's boiled over in a bit where now you're in a moment where you're saying to yourself, the season's not been his, and he's feeling the pressure, and he's going to feel the pressure. And I think, that to be kind to him, you can be trained to do this stuff, but there'll be times you do media interviews, there's times we've done podcasts and stuff like that where you say something you think it hasn't quite come out how I meant that in my head. And I think that's maybe, if you're being kind, what's happened to him. But he's been frustrated because objectively, both things are true. Arsenal have improved significantly, and he has improved them, but they haven't achieved what they could or should achieve. And I wonder if some of that pressure, I've speculated this to, again, a mate, is that because some of that might be his own doing? Did he say no to a striker? Was it the club? Who was it? Is he beginning to regret decisions he's made or influenced or wished they'd gone different ways? Because arguably this season would have been the one you'd have thought he'd come away with one of them big trophies. So I think it's pressure is shown a little bit, but I just love that he got it given back to him with the chant.
It's not exactly a no excuses culture he runs there, is it? It doesn't. Saying to people that he never stops telling us about the injuries. He's never stopped being shy of Semi having digs at his board for not delivering him a striker. He's like, every time they walk across the white lines of the pitch, that squad knows they've got a reason to fail, I'd argue.
Yeah, I think now he's obviously trying to control the narrative. I think he is feeling the pressure. It is 5 seasons without a trophy. That's going to bring pressure. If I was an Arsenal fan, he would be starting to annoy me a little bit with some of the language he's starting to use now. Listen, you can't kid fans. They know the stuff. I know there's idiots across kind of both all fan bases, certainly online. It can be a little bit like that, but people know the team, and I think there's times recently where he's just trying to kid one or two on it. I don't think that'll continue to be accepted if it maybe goes another 12 months and you're seeing similar excuses. Let's not forget, he spent an absolute shitload of money, by the way, over this tenure. He's found himself knee-deep in left-backs for some reason, for some mad reason. He just keeps buying them when he hasn't needed them. So there is that. But he has spent an awful lot of money, and that will bring its own pressure. You have got to deliver. I said before, flippantly, called him a bit of a helmet. I do think he's a good manager. I think he is a good manager, and he has done a good job.
Sounds like you're stacking it.
But helmet or good manager? Come on, make your mind up.
He's definitely both.
But has he maybe taken them as far as he can. That's also a thing, and he has improved them. They have got better. They are a threat. They are a good football team. On the day, they are a problem for any given opposition. You saw them in Paris for 45. They were a problem for that team. And I know there was a lot of long balls and throw-ins and stuff. And listen, there's different ways to win a football match. But I just think there comes a point in the not too distant future where if he hasn't delivered a trophy, my God, that pressure will intensify. And one or two will just maybe start to think, is he just a nearly man, or is he ever going to be able to get us to that point where you do win the biggest honours with him?
I love the idea that you've described like he goes around picking left backs up as if it's like someone, as if it's someone's mum just buy one get one free offers in the house. There's another one there. Let's have one of them.
I think he's given it the big one in a sense, even through being defensive, Josh. That the first 4, 5, maybe 6 games of next season are absolutely vital for him. I think if they start well, they win 5 out of 6, or they go on a winning run, he's then able to sort of wear this cloak he's put around himself of, we're actually the best team, just no one can see it yet. He's able to go, see, told you, watch us now. We haven't got injured. He'll be able to give it the big one and almost call back and make valid what the crap he's come out with this season. But if he falls anyway short of that, even if they only, say, win 4, draw 1, lose 1, any niggle, any chinks of light, I think the pressure is going to ratchet up and it will still continue to bleed onto the players.
Yeah, I think this is his problem. I think that's his problem. I think it's getting to a point now where, because it's taking so long and every time someone expects them to make the leap, they don't quite do it. It is getting to a point now where, let's say next season, say they're leading the Premier League with 3 games left or something, and they've got like a 2-point lead or something like that. The pressure that they're going to be under now to actually get over the line and prove it, it's just going to be a lot higher than like if City are in that spot or if we're in that spot, because we've just done it this season. So it's definitely growing as a thing, and once that gets in your head, it can just start to play with how you behave on the pitch and everything. I agree with Ian. No, I do think Arteta's really good. The problem is he's just a tit. I think that's it. I think if I was an Arsenal fan.
So you're considered analysis, Mr. Distance covered. Is that what stats are telling you? He's demonstrably a tit.
He is, though, mate. Like, I think if I was an Arsenal fan, if I was an Arsenal fan, I just want him to shut up. Just stop talking, mate.
Yeah.
Your coaching is really good, and I think he's better than his players. I think what's limiting Arsenal getting over the line isn't Arteta necessarily. I think it's some of his players are just relatively.
They're not that level.
Just top 4 players. Yeah, they're not title winning level. If you list like a combined 11 of Liverpool and Arsenal players, or previous years City and Arsenal players, the first 3 that you'd pick, the first 3 or 4 that you'd pick would be City or Liverpool, and then you get to the Arsenal players who were good, but they're not like difference makers. They're not like generation, like Van Dijk or Salah or something like that. So I think he is getting in his own head. I think he's starting to want to control the narratives to the extent that he's literally one by one listing every reason why they're not doing well. And in my head, they are reasons. I think he's right with a lot of the things he's saying, the genuine reasons, but you can't say it. You're not allowed to start saying it if you're in the building, because then they look like excuses, and then players start leaning on it and all that. So I have a lot of sympathy with him, because I do think the past 3 seasons...
You called him a tit.
Well, he is, but he's good at what he does. I think the last 3 seasons he's got more points than Liverpool. He's got about 4 fewer points than Man City over 3 seasons, but they've got 2 titles and Arsenal have got none. So it is funny, and the pressure's ramping up on them now. Like, so yeah, hopefully they just keep struggling, mate, because it is a laugh. Like,
okay. All right, well, I just want to finish very quickly, really, just looking ahead to the next time Liverpool play a football match. Is it about, it's a week from when we're recording on Monday. Next Monday, Jay, the boys are at Brighton. Obviously, there's nothing much for us to play for. I don't think there's a huge amount. Maybe Brighton can get into the Conference League if they win or get nearer to it. From our point of view, it's not the end of the world if we don't get any more points, but I would like to slightly gild the season with a respectable points total for a title winner, or is that just...
Yeah, a couple of easy wins. That's what you wanted yesterday to be in that.
Yeah.
A couple of easy wins would be nice. Just enjoy the moment for the fans who are there. Probably depends what state they come back in. I think they wanted to Dubai, apparently, haven't they? Or the
Again.
stories they go to Dubai. They've had more holidays. They've had more holidays in season than get out of season. But
The Judith Charms,
you
I think you'll
know,
find.
they should be enjoying that. So hopefully he's got them doing a bit of training, because it has looked at times in the past couple of weeks like they haven't done any training at all. But again, that's an intensity thing. I think, yeah, just, you know, Brighton will want to win, but they're, you know, it's borderline them making Europe. So I think for us, yeah, a nice win, easy, be good. I can see him making quite a few changes for Brighton. I think he'll go dead strong at Palace, and he'll make a few changes for Brighton like he did for Chelsea.
Okay, last word. You can pick me an 11 for Brighton. What do you think he'll actually do?
I agree with
for
Jay.
shitting
I think so. I think he might work back a little bit from Palace, and I think it will be full throttle at Palace. All his boys that have got up to this point, they'll play on that final day. I think there will be some rotation. You know, I think he'll maybe want to have a look at one or two things for next season as well. That would feel sensible. You know, an opportunity to do that. Brighton are a good opposition as well, good level, bit of a weird team. You know, you never know what Brighton are going to turn up on any given day. Get a good result of the weekend. I think he will make changes, but I still expect to see a really kind of strong core, though. You know, I think Van Dijk will play. I think Salah will play. I think you'll see McAllister play, go back to his former club. I think Gravenberch will play. But maybe it's another chance for someone like a Harvey Elliott. Maybe I felt a little bit sorry for Elliott in the Chelsea game, in the context of he gets an opportunity, but it's not with other midfielders who usually start. And I think that's maybe something the manager might have a little think about.
Okay, we're going to wrap there. It's been a good one. We'll not make no apologies for it being Trent heavy. He is unfortunately the man of the moment for a few days more, but back to football again next week. Thank you very much to Jay, to Ian and to Josh and to Andy for producing. And you get Neil back next week.